Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis Marie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the queendom come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum, in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. Here we are again on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders. And we are joined in the most beloved way again with my beloved Deborah L. Kelley. And we have been making our mystical way through the Garden of a Desert Rose. And we are starting today with chapter 9, which is entitled Shared Realities. Time, space, and knowledge localize experience. Focusing our interest upon a fleeting point of view, no permanence is found. No permanence seems necessary. The movement of being moved appears to be life's quest, a reality shared, none more exclusive than another. Wholeness seeking wholeness as structures come and go. Carl Gerant.
After the football staff returned from lunch, the head coach handed each secretary her gift, and then since the gifts were all alike, everyone could dive in and open them at the same time. The women excitedly peeled off the beautiful wrappings, and each delighted wholeheartedly at what she found. A Fitz and Floyd ceramic rabbit. The rabbits had white bodies with gray fur markings as an overall pattern. On top of each one's back was a removable lid, and a pale pink ceramic Christmas bow sprinkled with holly served as the lid's handle. Lenny's bunny reminded her of Elizabeth's book, The Velveteen Rabbit. Lenny had promised to read it to her daughter on Christmas Eve, and now the universe had gifted Lenny with her own beautiful rabbit. Lenny gently held the bunny up into the light. His eyes caught her attention. When she looked into them, she thought her new bunny gave her a very knowing look. His sweet mouth, indented beneath his nose, was turned up. He seemed to approve of her as much as she delighted in him. To everyone's surprise, the gift giving wasn't quite over yet. The equipment manager, who enjoyed complaining the head coach gave away too many jerseys to fans, gave each of the secretaries bright orange sweatshirts and pants. Then, around 3 o'clock, the head coach told the secretaries to take the rest of the day off. They all flew toward him with hugs of thanks. After he left, the secretaries exchanged their ornaments. Lenny was the new girl in office, so she opened her gift first. When she did, her eyes filled with tears. In her hands rested a round ornament with a floating universe of dancing stars. It was the same ornament she'd bought for Katie and wanted to keep. "Don't you like it?" Katie asked nervously. "No, Katie, I love it," Lenny exclaimed. "Now open your gift and you'll see what I mean." Katie did as instructed. "Well, this is a strange coincidence," she said, looking puzzled. "Where did you buy my ornament? I drove all All the way to Maryville to buy your gift. Well, I live in Maryville, so I didn't have to drive as far as you, Lenny said, laughing. Soon the secretaries went back to their desks to get ready to leave, and Lenny decided to call Dawn. She was so excited about Mitzi's offer to keep her children, she couldn't wait for the bowl game coming up. She couldn't wait to share the good news. Mitzi already told me, Dawn said, chuckling. No more castor oil face for you. You know, I had a really scary morning, but it has ended up being the best day I've had in a long time. I feel, well, I'm having trouble explaining how I feel because it feels so new. I feel like a weight has somehow been lifted off my shoulders, but I'm not exactly sure what has changed about my life. Maybe I'm growing a little soul power. That's big in itself, Lenny, Dawn said in a serious tone of voice. I know, Lenny agreed, and right now I'm having trouble chasing back crazy happy tears. Those aren't crazy happy tears, they're cleansing, Lenny. Well, I guess you're right. If working on my bad habit thoughts and words have anything to do with my current happiness, I'm glad I shook myself loose from that snake. He was mean. How do you know your snake was a he? Dawn asked. I don't. But just now when you asked me that question, that's what came to me. Wasn't Eve's devil snake in the Garden of Eden a male? Yeah, good point. I always thought the devil snake was a male. Dawn giggled. We were both spoon-fed Bible stories as little children, Lenny. Too often. I don't pay attention to what I might be creating in my life from those early years. I often feel the more positive my daily affirmations become, the more unwanted those patterns and negative beliefs resurface, like telling myself over and over, I'm beautiful, until I pass by a mirror and see every flaw known to mankind. My inner critic is mean, like your snake. I pretend she doesn't exist, but she does. That's what I admire about you, Lenny. I thought about it all day long. You're not afraid to examine everything in your life. It challenges you, excites you, frustrates you. Sometimes it makes you feel lonely and afraid, but you never run away from what you discover about yourself. No, I just fling it across the room, then worry about where it landed, Lenny laughed. Do you ever wish what you hoped for, dreamed about, and believed as a child had come true, Lenny asked. You mean learn ABC and your life will be ABC simple? Dawn asked. Yes, Lenny answered. That's exactly what I mean. Well, that would be nice, but that's just not the world we live in. What is good for some is not necessarily good for all, but every planet has its place in the sky. And every life has its own purpose, its own special place and time in which to grow and evolve. Granny saw you wandering in the desert and reminded you that you are a beautiful soul in spite of what you think about your past history. Remember my Mimi's sand story? When life kicks sand in your shell, make a pearl. Well, you're a desert rose. Maybe that means life has kicked a lot of sand in your shell. And whether you consider or not, you are growing. Your granny didn't ask you to change your past, which you keep trying to wish away. She asked you to grow right now, today, where your 2 feet are planted. Dawn, you're so wise. You always say what I need to hear, Lenny responded. Oh, and speaking of roses, a complete stranger handed me a paper rose this morning. At first, I thought he was hitting on me, but he didn't ask for my phone number. He just asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. Did you tell him a fashion designer? Dawn asked. You're always whining about that. No, she said reluctantly. Actually, I let that dream fly away years ago. I told him I wanted to grow up and be a child. Honey, you don't have to grow into one. You're already there, Dawn said, giggling. Dawn, do you think my inner child is sinner? Lenny asked. Today I was doodling on a piece of paper while I was talking on the to a caller on the phone, and I ended up drawing a rose and putting a baby in the center of it. Jesus said, "You must enter the kingdom of heaven like a child," Dawn answered. "That makes as much sense as anything else I could come up with." "We've been talking too much about me lately," Lenny said, changing the subject. "Tell me how your day's been going." "You know," Dawn said in a quiet tone, "I had an odd experience myself today. Actually, I'd almost forgotten about it. I'm glad you're asking me to share it because I want your opinion. This afternoon, when I was working on Mimi's Rock Garden, I had the radio tuned to an oldie station. Suddenly, a really, really old song came up. The lyrics went, 'I'm in the mood for love.'" "Wow, that is old," Lenny said. "Yeah, I know," Dawn agreed. "Usually this station plays the same standards over and over again. Anyway, I was humming, and I stopped to rest while the song was playing. I looked over at a really smooth round rock, and this is the really weird part of my story. I saw Grandma Tiny's face." "I can't wait to see that rock," Lenny exclaimed. "No, silly. The rock is just an ordinary river rock with a few shadowy patterns to it. I only saw my Grandma Tiny's face in my mind's eye. Anyway, when I heard 'I'm in the mood for loving' on the radio, Grandma Tiny was the farthest thing from my mind. I don't think I'd talked very much about her. She was from a small cottage village in Japan. My grandpa was in the army when they met." "Was your Grandma Tiny fond of the song you heard playing?" "I don't know. She died suddenly in her sleep while I was in elementary school. The story I'm about to share is a silly memory, but one I treasure. I remember clearly a visit with Tiny the summer I discovered mood lipstick. She never wore any makeup, but I tried to put some of my lipstick on her for fun. She giggled and kept hiding from me. She turned it into a game." "How funny," Lenny laughed. "On my lips, the lipstick looked hot pink, and she'd shake her head saying, 'No, no, no, no.'" "So did you ever convince her to try it?" Lenny asked. "I begged her until she finally gave in, and on her lips, the lipstick turned bright red. When she saw herself in the mirror, she wiped it off saying, 'Hooker, hooker, hooker, hooker.'" But both Dawn and Lenny broke out laughing. "What a cute story, Dawn. Thank you for sharing it with me," Lenny said when she could catch her breath. "It also makes me realize those we have lost to death are only a thought away. I don't think heaven is far away either, do you?" "It's as close as our own heart," Dawn responded. "True words have never been spoken. I guess one must be childlike to believe in experiences that can't be measured or tested by the rational mind. Maybe that's why only a child can enter the kingdom of heaven." Then, abruptly changing the subject, she added with a giggle, "By the way, I've told Joseph all about you. He can't wait to meet you." Joseph was Dawn's new boyfriend, and she was eager for him to meet her best friends. "I can only imagine what you've told him," Lenny said, laughing. "Well, all I can say is do your best not to act too normal because I've told him you're my crazy artist friend. Don't let him down. He loves eccentric people like you." "Me? Act normal? I wouldn't know how, and I'm a terrible actress, so I can assure you I won't disappoint him." "Hey girl," Dawn said with mischief in her voice, after "hello, nice to meet you, tell him your snake story." "That would do it, Dawn," Lenny said, laughing at the thought. By the time Lenny hung up the phone, the office was empty. She had brought her orange notebook to work, so if the day got slow and boring, she could write down her thoughts about her snake dream. She hadn't gotten a chance to do that earlier, so she decided to do it now before she left. Opening up the notebook, Lenny wrote down as much of the dream as she could remember. When she was done, she unpinned her paper rose and taped it onto a blank page, pressing it down with the weight of her palm. As she turned off the office light, she looked out the window. A slow, misty rain had shifted into a downpour. All the other offices were locked and her umbrella was in the car. All she had was a small plastic fold-up rain poncho she kept in her desk drawer. It wasn't much, but at least it was something. Thus armed for the bad weather, Lenny hurried down the hall, through the door, her red shoes clicking all the way to the employee parking lot.
And that is chapter 9, Shared Realities. And what does your heart hope the reader or listener gets from that chapter?
Well, I think trying to rationalize with our intellect other realities of which we share with our loved ones that have crossed over. I can.
Because you said our loved ones that have passed are only a thought away.
I think that sums up everything I believe. I would share. I'm a lifetime lucid dreamer, and my teacher Bobby D told me that I had one of the largest third eyes he'd ever seen, and he never explained. He never went further. But I was sharing a visitation from a loved one that had crossed over with Mother. And she told me a story. She said, well, when you were 2 years old, you fell off the steps and fell right on your forehead and hit your head. And I thought, oh, dear God, that's going to make that poor girl addled. And so she, that was one of her favorite words for not all being all there. And it could have caused my third eye to open as a child, or I came that way. But I have always, this reality and the realms in which I travel in my unconscious state of mind are both simultaneously very real to me. And these happenings, my friend, what she shared and everything, is just to say that truth that no one totally ever leaves us as long as they're in our heart and they are a thought away. They have memory that can bring them their energy back alive. In fact, I think it attracts their soul, which is eternal, into to help us in times of need, or when we feel so lost and lonely. You and I have each other during this time of isolation and pandemic, but those who don't can remember that there are shared realities in life, and those who can come to us to give us comfort. Our loved ones that are no longer in the earth suit can come. And I don't think I wanted it to be more than that.
Well, you said you hit your head as a young child, your forehead?
2, Mother said, and she thought that had she
somewhere up here near your third eye?
Yes, I was fell head first on concrete, and even psychics have told me this, but that's nothing that I can. That's not the gift. In other words, that I'm at 5. I knew I was an artist, and so I use my inner eye to create with, to draw with, to paint with words, books, and that's it.
So did it knock sense into you or knock some sense out of you?
I think it knocked sense out of me.
I asked that because I had a moment as a young boy. I probably was 4 or 5 years old, running around the house, playing cowboys and Indians and with my neighbor boy friend, and I hit my forehead on the corner of the brick porch.
Wow.
And blood was, every time my heart beat, the blood was squirting out. And my mother, she was a worrier. She was like not very good at leaving her concerns about my being hurt.
Right. She taught you to fear everything, like my mother. We shared that too.
But I hit my forehead really good. And then on another occasion where I was probably in my early, maybe I was 10 or 11, we were playing hide and seek at night, and the tree was the base. And I was running to the tree with all my might, and there was a limb that was broken. It was long enough that it stopped me from being able to touch the tree with my hand. It bonked me right in between my eyes. And I really thought, I gave a lot of thought to that accident because I thought, man, I was so lucky and blessed that a little bit off and, I could have been a pirate with one eye.
I know.
But,
Yeah.
there's another headbanging story that comes to mind, and I don't know if it's true, but it's been said that Meher Baba, the avatar from India, Meher Baba,
Yeah.
and his young children, friends, were playing in the neighborhood they lived in, and there was a house that was considered to be spooky because this old lady lived there, and they did things to tease her, and they would go in her yard, and she didn't want anyone in her yard. They just did things to kind of taunt her. And the story goes that this woman was out on her porch one day, and the kids were coming, and she threw a rock and hit Meher Baba in the forehead. And the story I heard, and again, I perhaps shouldn't say it because I don't know it to be true, but it's something that everyone can explore and do some research and see if you verify this. But it was said that after that, Meher Baba did some very purposeful, consistent headbanging to gain enlightenment. So
don't do this, anyone, please.
Don't do that at home, only in your dreams.
Right. Please don't do that.
So let's move forward. And move is a pivotal word because this chapter is called Still Waters. And I'm going to read the quote leading into this chapter, which goes, "When people say I am wise or a sage, I cannot accept it. A man once dipped a hat full of water from a stream. What did that amount to? I am not that stream. I am at the stream, but I do nothing. Other people are at the same stream, but most of them find they have to do something with it. I stand and behold, admiring what nature can do." Carl Jung.
With her first step into the street, Lenny lost her one-handed grip on her plastic poncho. It bellowed and flopped to the ground like a deflated balloon. She couldn't run in high-heel shoes, so she hugged her gift bag and purse tight to her chest beneath her blue cape. If the bag got too wet, it would break. She had to protect her treasured new bunny. The rain was coming down so heavy she could hardly see. As Lenny looked upward, trying to wish herself into her car, she stepped into an enormous puddle of water. With nothing to do but surrender, she didn't even try to miss the rushing waters that cascaded across the uneven parking lot. Soon her heel dug deep into the uneven hole. She barely prevented herself from having a bad fall. It was an awkward movement and just enough to unlatch the single button holding her cape around her neck. The cape sailed away, but Lenny couldn't stop to catch it.
Excuse me. Now you're wearing your red snakeskin pumps when you stepped into that.
Yes, I was.
I remember that. You wore those to the party, and you were walking down the hallway.
No woman should be without a red pair of shoes, Louie. Sorry.
Red snakeskin. I believe in red shoes too.
No, I know. Once at her car, Lenny placed her wet gift bag on top of the hood. She fumbled for her keys and unlocked the passenger side door. Once her package was safe, she took off her shoes, the red heels, as you remembered, and threw them onto the floor of the front seat. Then she ran across the slippery blacktop and rescued both her cape and her plastic poncho. The warmth and beauty of her dry clean only Christmas sweater was now a thing of the past. Sitting back in her car, she surveyed the damage and slapped her her hand against the steering wheel in disgust. If she had only left work when the other secretaries had left, her sweater wouldn't have been spoiled beyond repair. They had listened to the weather. They had been prepared in their sensible shoes and tote bag umbrellas. Life was a spinning wheel of absurdity, Lenny thought. This morning she was thankful for being late. A memory ago, the universe had gifted her with a paper rose from a stranger and a beautiful ceramic bunny from the head coach. But right now she felt walloped. Lenny stuck the key in the ignition and turned the heater dial to high. Cold air blasted her in the face, chilling her to the bone. She turned it off quickly. When she turned on the windshield wipers, a screeching sound sent more shivers down her spine. The rubber on one of the wiper blades had apparently rotted so badly it crumbled off in the heavy rain, allowing the bare metal blade to scrape across the window. Lenny looked out at the halo-like arch that formed across her windshield with every pass of the wiper blade. The rain was too heavy for driving, so she sat and waited for it to slow down. She was glad the temperature outside wasn't freezing, or all the rain would have turned into a snow blizzard. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, Lenny remembered, and it would be hard to find an open garage to fix the wiper blade. The place Katie had gone to was right off Kingston Pike, she remembered, which wasn't far away. And the coach had sent the secretaries home 2 hours early, so if she left now, she would probably get there before the garage closed. Suddenly, the universe was her friend again. To buffer the irritating scraping, Lenny turned on her radio. It didn't really help, but the heat did after the engine warmed up. Her teeth chattered as the radio crooned, chestnuts roasting on an open fire. As Lenny's car moved forward, her mind moved in reverse. Why had she left her umbrella in the car this morning? Why had she bought an expensive dry clean only sweater or let her mother give it to her on her meager budget? Why had she married the two first men who asked her? Sorry. Then, at the first red light, she caught herself thinking of her children and praying their bus had left on time so they wouldn't end up like their drowned rat mother. The light turned green, and as Lenny struggled to see out her foggy windshield, her mental talk shifted gears again. If she hadn't been married, she wouldn't have had two beautiful children. And if she'd stayed miserable in her second marriage, her jealous husband would never have allowed her, her jealous husband had never allowed her to work or even think about going back to school. Lenny's life could have turned out a lot worse. She also remembered she'd removed her paper rose before leaving work. Had she forgotten to take it off, it would now be nothing more than a spitball. Even though the rose's value was pennies, compared to her ruined dry clean only sweater, the thought warmed her heart. A block away, she spotted the all-service gas station Katie had spoken of. She clicked on her turn signal and patted her brake. The driver behind her was driving too fast. He blew his horn and almost crashed into the back of her car. As he missed Lenny's car by inches, she gasped, quickly recovering. She couldn't help but feel lucky. That this was all wrong with her car. That all that was wrong with her car was a rotted wiper blade. The station had a nice long overhang at the front door. Lenny was already soaking wet, but she didn't want to get any wetter. A tall man wearing grease-stained overalls came over to greet her, and she explained her problem. He pulled off her blades and told her to wait in her car until he could check to see if he had a replacement. The man went back inside, and Lenny watched him through the big glass window as he studied a long row of narrow boxes. Then he waved for her to come on in, so Lenny left the car in park and hurried into the waiting area. The man told her to have a seat, and he'd be with her shortly. There was only one more chair available. It was avocado green vinyl and smelled of cigarettes and motor oil. Her wet clothing and hair hugged her with icy fingers. She couldn't even imagine how she looked. As she scooted her legs up under her body for warmth, she snagged her stockings on a split seam of the chair upholstery, ripping an enormous hole in the back of her pantyhose. She sighed at the last ounce of vanity slowly dripping away into the puddle of rainwater she was leaving on the floor. Lenny had not planned on changing her clothes before attending Dawn's church program. She was all girly. She loved to dress up for any occasion, even for book readings. But tonight, the football trainer's gift of bright orange sweatsuits was calling her name. The tall mechanic returned, his fingernails black with layers of old grease, and mumbled about having trouble finding the size of blades for her car. He smelled like a gasoline-soaked rag. He handed her a slip of paper with the cost of the new wiper blades. It only took a minute. I don't charge labor for small jobs like this, he said in a friendly tone. Then noticing her bedraggled appearance, the man added, "It looks like you just went for a little swim in the lake." "Yes," Lenny explained, "and I feel just like I look." She paid the cashier with cash. The unplanned cost of new blades was not as bad as she expected, but often she was down to the bare minimum in her checking account by payday. She'd never budgeted on a monthly basis before this year. It was still hard for her to pay unexpected expenses. The cashier, noticing her wet clothing, offered her a free cup of coffee. Lenny accepted with gratitude. She decided to sit back down and wait for the rain to slow down before driving home. The sound of the water as it cascaded off the canvas overhang and metal guttering was so mesmerizing to Lenny, her mind began to wander. When she was inside and warm, nothing was more calming for her than the sound of a heavy rain. But outside, the storm was a monstrous force to be reckoned with. Lenny realized she could choose to respond with acceptance, although she admitted to herself, more often than not, she reacted to life like the mindless driver who had almost plowed into the back of her car. Had the driver felt mentally tossed and battered all day long? Had he ever been given a paper rose for a silly answer? She felt certain he hadn't. She was glad she no longer felt angry with him. Lenny hadn't had a chance to reflect on the day's Bible verse from her desk calendar. It was one she knew by heart. She memorized it long ago in Sunday school. She leaned back in the foul-smelling chair and sipped her coffee. She closed her eyes and thought about King David's still waters. She imagined he liked to lay down in grassy meadows, staring up at the heavens. No doubt he was much more capable of finding center, staying put than Lenny. One minute she was on an emotional roller coaster. The next she was caught in mindless motion like a hamster on a treadmill. Could life be lived any other way? She wondered. She threw her empty white styrofoam cup in the nearby wastebasket and waved a thank you to the clerk. Hurried back to her car in her squeaky high-heeled shoes for the rest of the drive home. Lenny wondered just how wild her life must look from the clarity and height of her granny's point of view. In one way, she envied those who'd passed on. She'd only feared death because it meant separation from her children and loved ones. Death might bring long, drawn-out pain like her granny experienced, but it could also be quite sudden like Dawn's grandma Tiny. If Gandhi were a mountain lake, Lenny mused, he would definitely mirror heaven's stillness. As she drove into her driveway, her children were standing in front of their frost-covered storm door, drawing snowmen and writing words she could not read. Excuse me, I'm sorry, my throat's getting dry. They were both grinning from ear to ear, seemingly removed from yesterday's broken promises. The hearts of children mend quickly, Lenny thought. Why her own heart did not, she did not know. She longed for a hot shower, dry slippers, and a cozy robe. but that wasn't going to happen tonight. Her hair tightly plastered to her face and neck, she unloaded the car and hurried into the house. Gosh, Mom, your sweater looks like roadkill, Mac joked. Elizabeth reached for Lenny's bag. She opened the damp gift bag, searching for additional presents. Nothing for you, Lenny said with a smile. No presents until Christmas, except for Nikki, and I'm giving her a card with shopping money, she said, handing the babysitter a card with her name on it. Hope you like it, Nikki. The babysitter opened her card and thanked Lenny for the $10 bill. By the way, did you hear it might snow tonight? Nikki asked as she put on her coat. I heard there was only a small chance, Lenny answered, but like the children, I hope this time the weatherman gets it right. Nikki seemed more talkative than usual tonight. Lenny was glad the shy girl had finally warmed up to her. They said their goodbyes and Nikki slipped out the door. Mom, Elizabeth said, you promised we could open Dad's presents on Christmas Eve, remember? Did they even come? Lenny asked. As she said that, she knew she'd broken Gandhi's #1 rule. She wasn't thinking the best of her ex-husband. Lenny looked under the tree and noticed several new packages. She smiled and hugged her daughter, who was obviously overjoyed. Well, Lenny said, I don't remember saying you could open your father's gifts early, but that sounds like a great idea. And afterward, you can call him and let him know how much you liked his presents. Elizabeth squealed with delight as Lenny walked into her bedroom to peel off her wet clothes. She took a quick hot shower and returned to the living room wearing her bathrobe minus its sash. Mac, where's the sash for my robe? She asked. Your what? Oh, you mean the yellow terry snake? I think it's still in Elizabeth's room. I'll get it for you. She looked down at the new stack of presents and dismissed the negative thoughts she had had about her ex-husband. After Mac returned with her sash, she told the children about how her cape blew off in the employee parking lot. Their laughter seemed to make ruining her sweater almost acceptable. Attaching her sash to her robe, Lenny walked to the garage and put the damp sheets from the washing machine into the dryer. Then she walked back into the kitchen and attacked the sink full of headache-free pots and pans.
Well, as a shoe person, which I am, the moral of that story is that you didn't ruin your shoes even though you stepped in that puddle.
Amen.
That's very important when it comes to the shoes you wear and keeping them in a pristine condition.
Yes.
But other than that, you were having quite a day.
Yes, and
but I like how you, at the end of that terrible day, you saw the sink full of headache-free pots and pans.
Yes, my aspirin bottle that really happened.
Oh, I get it. The pills are all in there. I thought you were going
My
to
aspirin's
meditate while you were
dissolved.
washing
No,
dishes
honey.
and find bliss.
No.
Now I remember you dumped all the aspirin into the
Yes,
sink.
right before I saw my cranky, mean-spirited neighbor.
Take all the headaches out of your pots and pans.
Yeah, drop a bottle of aspirin in the soap water.
So you invented a new method.
Yeah. I'm not bragging on myself by saying that it's natural for me because my mother did this. She would say the most incredible, funny things, being totally honest and serious. And I guess I'm mirroring some of that in my personality. She did. She really did.
And the first thought would say, why did she say that? But later on, like we all do now, we think of the things she said that were so out of place
and funny.
And they just make you laugh.
I know, and funny. One time, well, my mother was her worst critic. She was beautiful, raven-haired, green-eyed, fair-skinned beauty. She picked up a lot of the Irish, English DNA that my grandmother, who was part Native American, did not. But she would she would at times think she was ugly and fat as she got older, and I would cry because of her attitude toward herself. And then, before her death 2 years ago, I would come in and she'd say, "Honey, I hate to tell you this, but you're getting fat." And I would say, "Mother, I'm not 16 anymore. I'm 60. And I think it's okay if I put a few pounds on." My beloved thinks every day I look perfect. So I'm going to just let that be. you know, um, it's just in my genes, I guess, to just be fluffy. But we should criticize ourselves no matter what. And but she would say funny things, or "You're so beautiful," and then she'd come back and whip you with something else.
Like a child, she might not guard her honesty. She might just say the truth innocently, even though in those cases the truth might have a little sting to it.
Yes, indeed. But
that's okay. She meant well.
She did. She's a beautiful soul that entered my life. I chose her, actually. I'm of the belief that I chose my parents. Yes, they divorced. I chose, and I had contracts with all of the men in my life, including you, thank goodness. However, if we get off track and we stay in a dark place, I don't think it's possible that we meet our divine partner, our perfect partner, because the divine and perfect partner is going to mirror our higher self, our open-hearted God self. And if we haven't achieved that wholeness of beauty and self-acceptance as we are, totally, then it's hard to find someone that isn't going to use you, manipulate you, or think of you as some kind of property they own. And so you and I don't have that vibration at all, and no one should. But unfortunately, in relationship, I've done it, and so have you.
Well, you've spoken about how oftentimes men, whether they know it or not, are trying to marry their mother.
Yes.
And women, whether they acknowledge it or not, are trying to marry their father. Mm-hmm. And we oftentimes go through, I hear so many people say this about, I married the same person over and over. They had a different face and a different name, but it was really the same person that they had thought they had gotten away from in a previous relationship, yet it came back. And that relationship aspect of learning, the person, places, and things, I believe that you attract into your life. Everything has a divine gift to it. There's an order to it. But you see a difference in your life when you start noticing the patterns, because you spoke about choices lead to behaviors. Behaviors lead to experiences, and experiences oftentimes create the same emotions. And because we are beings where our emotions cause hormonal secretions in our brain, the brain can then secrete certain emotions that allow you to repeat the same choices and the same behaviors, same experiences, and the same secretion of emotions, and you just go around this merry-go-round in your life until hopefully something happens. And I think it might be you get enough dark night of the soul experience on your life's resume.
Yes.
And you can get a job. All relationships take work. Every relationship is like getting a new job. But you notice that the work that you have to do when you've worked on yourself is more about the fact that you've actually learned to love yourself. You're not looking for something outside yourself
to feel
to
complete.
fulfill you.
Exactly.
And I was thinking when you were talking about what the bleep do we know, the character in that movie, she would go to the mirror every day and really curse herself.
My mother did that. I saw my mother do that. And she was such a beauty, it broke my heart. It's not, that's the funny part about the species of the female, is we are our worst critics. And
well, I think men can be that way. Maybe they don't
you think so?
do it as much, but I think there's a new breed of man that's very, there can be men that are that inward narcissistic. You know, the men that, like years ago, there were always barbershops. And then there was a hairstyling trend where men didn't go to the barber, they went to have the hair styled.
Right.
And that's kind of a feminine attribute. And something came to me this morning, I was writing, and well, I have this saying, mother, daughter, sister, lover, warrior, priestess, goddess, friend, without beginning and without end. A woman can inspire one to sing the most heavenly blues. One of the first songs I wrote was called Heavenly Blues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the blues is a major, art form in music. And there's happy blues, gospel blues, there's different kinds of blues. But I wrote a song called Heavenly Blues, and it was kind of obviously a play on words. But I was thinking that women can do only what women are here on earth to do.
Mm-hmm.
But men have some feminine within them too.
Yes.
And if men can find, and women have masculine in them as well. It's sad sometimes when we see the so-called evolution of genders, where women are almost emulating the same mistakes that the men made, that they didn't really consciously want to be like. But you don't want to, like the revolutions that happen in the world, some outside group of people that they revolt against the status quo and they take over what was not their domain to rule.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they get in a position to rule, if they're not careful, they find that the very same attributes that they didn't like in the last ruling class, they're emanating now in that position. So when we have this yearning for equality, and we feel when we're missing something in life and we know that we deserve to have it, sometimes we have to really work to earn it. But the work to earn bliss and joy and peace of mind, I think comes with, as you say a lot, it's an inside job. You've got to look at
it
yourself.
is an inside job, indeed.
And you have been in this journey allowing us to look, in a way we're looking into your life, but through these characters, which good writing always does that. You see something in the characters in a story, whether it's a child's story or an epic 6-part movie, or any story can have the moral that's on the surface and then the hidden message within the unspoken part of a story. And a metaphor can bring forth something unspoken, as you said. A parable the parable says something, the metaphor says something, but there's something in the parable and the metaphor that isn't even said, that if the heart is really listening, you get it.
Exactly. Well, I want to say something about my characters, all the characters, except the 2 children. I took the middle names of my real life children and my middle name and nicked my middle name into Lenny so I could step back and tell the truthful essence of who they were, who they meant to me as a mother, and etc. And the character, my enemy, so to speak, my neighbor, Tallulah, I fashioned her out of 3 different people that I perceived were, you could call them enemies, or I made them with my mind and way of thinking into enemies. I had a neighbor that two were both neighbors, so it was very truthful. But they both had an S name. These ladies' names started with an S. And so I went to bed. I was writing this chapter where I'm introducing Tallulah. And I was introducing her as a character that was important to what I wanted to say and knew I needed to say because of how I responded eventually to these ladies. But so I had thought about an S word, and I think I'd chosen Shirley. I'm not sure. I've never known a Shirley, but it was an S name that I had never met. And so when I go to bed, and this is honest truth about these characters, I went to sleep, and the character I had just described in my writing got in my face right in front of me and screamed, "My name is Tallulah, Tallulah." And it was so loud and forceful, I woke up. I grabbed my dream journal and script. I didn't even know how to spell Tallulah. I had to look that up. But I wrote out as best I could the name Tallulah. And even when Bobby Drennan told me that my angels were asking me to write, and I was saying, "Well, you've got somebody else's angels. I'm not a writer. I can't even spell." And he said, "No, I didn't. You're free. You're out of the box, the mental prison that many of us create ourselves but can't get out." And he said, when anybody gets out of their mental prison, they have to help others out. And my way out has always been paying attention to my vision streams. And even writing this myth helped me to stay out and never go back to some of that mind talk that my beloved mother had till the day she died, sadly.
But she journeyed on and
she
left
did.
a very beautiful lasting impression with all of us.
She did.
And her loved one came to her as she was transitioning, before the transition and as she was transitioning.
And wasn't that
welcoming
beautiful?
her to the other side. And that shows how love can truly be everlasting when you've done the work. And I hope I said that, well, I did say that once you learn to love yourself, you don't have to look outside yourself
to seek
for
love.
someone else to
Exactly.
feel that way.
And I need to say one more thing about the fear of death. My daughter had her own awakening, really startling. And like me, she had many visitors that had crossed over. So when you have this happening or you have that experience, it helps you not to fear death as much. And it's kind of a natural result of becoming more awakened, we should say. That's kind of common now, or a phrase. And so I saw my 10-year-old granddaughter, her daughter, recently. And during this pandemic, they've gone to school just 1 or 2 days a week. And I said, "Well, honey, how is school? Because I know it's challenging and different than children of this era have ever experienced." And she said, "Well, Gran, I'm not afraid of death anymore." And I was kind of put back by her answer. And I said, well, that's wonderful. How did this happen?" She said, "Well, my mommy," and she told me all these things. And she said, "So I'm not afraid anymore." And so.
And that's what the temples of quarantine can really
Yes,
be all about.
yes.
For a 10-year-old to say, "Well, I'm not afraid of death anymore." That's so
Right.
beautiful. I was thinking of sharing that. I'm glad we shared it
I did.
at this junction.
Yeah, it came. It was a blessing to us.
More of her wisdom as well. She has a knack for saying timelessly universal truths.
I know. Thank you.
Bless you, and
Namaste.
we'll be back for more. Well, that's it for Here and Now. But until we meet again, this has been Louis Marie Blanche thanking you for listening to Conversations with Elders on Glastonbury Radio 432. Bless you.
Quantum physics in the kitchen sink, the energy that follows the thoughts you think. Quantum physics and the cosmic sea, laws of nature too heavy for me. It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Science is sexy, physics is tasty, love is a frequency so easy to... Don't you play with me. It could cost eternity to have your pleasure temporarily. I pray, baby, someday you'll see love is not a game, you can't play with me. So I lift up my head unto Jah. All of this evil I shall conquer, to be fed with the fruit of the Spirit, to spread the light of wisdom within. You can't play with me. No, don't you play with me. It could cost eternity to have your pleasure temporarily. I pray that baby someday you'll see love is not a game, you can't play with me. In the temporary pleasure of eternal pain, life we live here is not a game. Dancing in the circle of those famous flames, with everything to lose and nothing to gain. You can't play with me. No, don't you play with me. It could cost eternity to have your pleasure temporarily. I pray, baby, someday you'll see love is not a game, you can't play with me. No, don't you play with me. It could cost eternity to have your pleasure temporarily. I pray, baby, someday you'll see love is not a game, you can't play with me. I see you selling your soul to Diablo, blinded by the glitter of silver and gold. But when you come to see the beauty of the fallen angel, forgiveness in your heart will come to tell you so. You can't play with me. No, don't you play with me. It could cost eternity to have your pleasure temporarily. I pray, baby, someday you'll see love is not a game, you can't play with me. Love can come like a thief in the night. Don't let your passion be found in the wrong and right. No one knows the day, no one knows the hour. Before it's too late, I hope you come to feel the power. You can't play with me. No, don't you play with me. It could cost eternity to have your pleasure temporarily. I pray, baby, someday you'll see love is not a game, you can't play with me. Love is not a game, you can't play with me. Love is not a game, you can't play with me.